Episode 4, Regenerating the Relationship. Welcome to Talking Family Business. My name is Leah Crowley, and in this 6-episode series, we're taking a look at succession plans, cycles, and future-proofing family businesses. Today we have HLB Mann Judd Business Advisory Manager Tom Roberts and Western Earthmoving General Manager Michael Ragg here because we want to take a look at the next generation. I'm sure both Tom and Michael are going to have some unique insights into being a protégé. We'll also be discussing mentoring relationships and building a support network of your own. Welcome to both of you.
G'day, Leah. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Leah.
It's great to have both of you sitting in this chair, both the chairs, because now we get to talk about the next generation, which is exciting. But I want to start off with, this is to both of you. Did you always know you wanted to be in the career and in the business that you're in? Tom, you go first.
Well, I think I kind of almost fell into it, to be honest. I got a lot of advice from a career manager back in high school, and my father was an accountant as well. So I needed to work after school, so it seemed like a pretty good option. Like going through university, I could work, study, have an income, and that was sort of quite important to my situation at the time. The more time I've spent going through the career, it's something I really enjoy. I enjoy the personal relationships and connections, and you can make a real difference to people's lives, and that's the element I really enjoy.
Well, just from listening to the first few episodes of this series, it sounds like you guys, the personal approach for sure, but also you are really helping shape some big moments in people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. The piece of work we're doing with Mike and Graham at the moment, we're sort of looking through the next 5 to 10 years of their business and planning the next succession and moving into the third generation. At the same time, we're also looking at the business strategy and what's required there, which is a really sort of interesting piece of work. And it's almost, being an accountant and an advisor, it's the holy grail. They're the types of relationships and the types of work you want to be doing.
And everyone would be unique, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone's unique.
Absolutely. That's the thing we always talk. I don't know, Stephen spoke about it in one of the earlier episodes about the 3 circles and the 3 axes of a family business. So, you've got the family dynamic and that's always unique to each family. You've got the business and what that requires, which is sort of as a standalone entity. And then thirdly, you've got ownership aspect and the money side of things and the aspects of control. And, that's the thing. And that's personally why I like working with family businesses, because it is so unique. There's so much emotion involved and yeah, as you say, every family is different.
Every family's different. Now, Mike, for you, you saw your dad working with your grandfather. We spoke to your brother Tom, and he said that he worked, with when he was younger as well. Were you doing similar stuff growing up?
Yes, definitely. From a very young age, I don't think I've ever questioned what I wanted to do. It was something I always felt I knew I wanted to do. When I was a toddler, I was always one out playing in the sandpit, moving sand around, not dirt, and loved joining Graham, Dad, going to work on Saturdays or weekdays go have a look at sites and understand what's happening. Loved getting into machines, operating. I still have vivid memories of sitting on some operators' laps, having a go operating machines as a young kid. Those guys are still employed with us now.
Wow, that's awesome.
Which is, testament to the success of the business. Having grown up working with people across our business over a long, long period of time, you get to learn about what's important for a lot of people that work in our business. And definitely gave me the opportunity to develop empathy for people who work in our business, what their roles are really like, what do they entail, what's important to them, how can Graham and I as owners make a big difference to them in their lives, how do we create a culture where people do want to work and want to see the business succeed and be there long term. I'm a third generation in the business. I think there's probably another 4 to 5 other families that are employed in the business where there's third generation employees currently working for us. But there is actually 2 fourth generations from another family. So Peter Kennedy, who's a site manager with us, his father started with us in the early 60s. And then Peter's step-grandchildren work with us. One is a surveyor, one's a scraper operator. So they're 4th generations in the business, which is a fantastic achievement for a business of 62 years to sort of have 4th generation employees that aren't family of the owners is quite rare. So we're very proud of that.
So this next question, I don't even know, Mike, if you're going to be able to answer it now. Now that I've heard that, like, you've always wanted to do it. But the next question for both of you is, has there ever been a time where you thought maybe a different career, like growing up, you thought, I'm going to be super stereotypical, a fireman, a doctor, a lawyer? Like, was there ever anything else that interested you?
Well, I actually remember I found one of my primary school, the Year 6 yearbook the other day. And I, in there you had to write what you thought you'd be when you grew up. And so and the teacher also gave a comment afterwards telling you what they thought you'd be. So I had a look and I said I had first grade cricketer / accountant. And then I looked down and saw what my teacher wrote and she just said accountant.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
She knew by then. Wow, that's impressive.
How old were you, Tom?
Oh, I would have been 11 or 12. I think it was just, probably much like yourself, Mike. It was just following in Dad's footsteps and that type of thing. As I said, I sort of largely ended up falling into the career because that might have been when I was a bit younger. But as I sort of grew and, got older, I didn't sort of necessarily see myself as an accountant. But, ended up here and very happy to have done so.
This is a podcast, so there is no visual, but I can see in both of your faces the passion and love that you have for what you do. Like, it's so obvious. And I mean, you guys must consider yourselves lucky to have figured out so early that that's what your path wanted, what you wanted your path to be.
I feel extremely fortunate that I've had the opportunity to join our family business. It was something I was exposed to from a young age, but always had a passion for. I was provided the right opportunities through my career to really learn what the business entails from go to woe, having started a similar path as Graham, starting out as the office junior. Well, actually, I recall I finished my HSC. I think that was on a Wednesday, had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off, and then Graham came in Sunday and said, you'll be at work tomorrow at 6:30, and it started from there.
So you didn't even have a gap week?
No. I think I got to go to schoolies. That was a bit later. But other than that, no, it was straight to work. Started out doing deliveries, so going to different offices, pick up checks, drop that around, go odds and ends of materials, doing some time on site, working as a chainman with one of our surveyors, spent a lot of time in estimating, then did some more site management type work, got back into estimating and spent a really healthy amount of time learning that skill. That's a skill you can't read in a book. You've got to learn that by doing it. And there's a real art to, you're tailing into quoting a job, but also the sales side of it, generating a lead, closing a deal, all that sort of stuff. I found that really gave me a real solid base to understand across the business what we're doing.
I don't know much about estimating, and perhaps there are others listening who are in a similar boat, but it sounds to me like the kind of job that you have to be very precise, like you have to be correct, kind of like accounting,
Kind of. It's called estimating.
Okay.
And sometimes could say it's guesstimating.
Okay.
How much? It's always at the death. How much is that special bolt that we can't find any quote for? What do you think? Well, the trick is, if there's 5 people in the room, get each person to write down on the sheet of paper what they think it's worth, average it, and that'll do.
That's a good tactic.
It's called estimating. if it's not called exactimating, you've still got to. If you consider everything that could go wrong that goes into a project and trying to build all that into your budgets and then what you're wanting to charge to your customer, you won't be competitive. At a tender, you've got to put your best price forward for what you think you can successfully deliver a project for, what you think will still be competitive and that a customer's going to be happy to pay. And then it's somewhere in between all that. You wish you could get paid that much. The customer wishes they could pay only this much, and you got to work out how to get some middle ground in between. And then you get the whole art of negotiating through it.
The old bartering.
Bartering.
Yeah, for sure.
And in construction, no two quotes are apples and apples. So it's always a challenge. We may provide some sort of offering, and then the 2 other competitors provide their bid, but they have different offerings as to how they're going to deal or take on certain risks or not take on certain risks. It's always a challenge to get a customer to understand that you have an apple, a banana, and a pumpkin. Like, they're not like for like at all. How do you want a pumpkin? Do you want an apple, banana, or do you want a watermelon? Like, we can change it to whatever you want. Don't just look at the bottom line. That's always the most challenging part. And I think it's about developing that relationship with the customers so that you can have that conversation. If you just take the stance, I'm just going to put my price in and wait for them to tell me that we've won, you won't win anything. I was shown a video a long time ago. ABC, always be closing.
Always be closing.
Always be closing.
Okay.
Very important.
So what was that, 4 or 5 days you got as a break after your HSC? 4?
Probably 4. Yeah.
4.
Sunday we don't work.
Okay.
So
I was just going to ask, Mike, did you turn up for work on the Monday after schoolies as well?
I think so. I think he actually sent me home early from schoolies saying, come on, get back to work. There's rock to be ripped.
So
actually, I got sick at schoolies, came home. To tell the truth.
Yeah, okay. Right.
Very ill. So, but no, I was brought back to work the next day. No need to say it. Lay at home.
No, that's right. It's a better story if you blame it on Dad.
Yeah, that's right. Tom, now you were at uni. Were you working whilst you were at uni?
Yeah, so
what were you doing?
I did a cadetship. So the way that works is basically I finished school. I started working at Mann, Judd when I was 17, actually. And so basically the way it works is you work 4 days a week and you get paid for the 5th day and basically cram as many subjects as you can into that one day because night classes weren't much fun. But yeah, so I mean, it's a great way to learn. What you're seeing at uni, you can apply practically in a real sense, which I thought was great. But it's becomes a bit difficult, obviously, managing priorities the more you progress and the more senior you become. But it's long hours, lots of hard work, but very well worth it.
It plays into the theory. If you need something done, you give it to a busy person. They work out how to get it done. I haven't gone through a similar experience. I can attest that the only way to do uni is working at the same time, in my opinion. That's what worked for me. I was fortunate in having done a construction project management degree at UTS. They really tailored it to that you were working 4+ days a week at minimum, and then offering classes at night or, 1 day a week, or they did block classes. So you'd go in all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and you do that 3 weekends a semester and you got the subject done that way. But as Tom said, you get to learn the theory and you're able to apply it in straight away. You could be learning something on the Friday and on Monday be putting it into practice rather than sort of doing 4 years of study and then waiting to get the opportunity to get a job and then being able to put it into practice. Realistically, if you've learned something 3.5 years ago, there's a good chance you've forgotten it.
Yeah, that's true. Working and studying at the same time, not only is the practicality and theory, mixing, but also it's giving you a really strong work ethic, right? Like you have to get that stuff done for both uni and the job. Did you consider yourselves hard workers before? Did that change during that study work time?
You don't have much of a social life.
Yeah.
Put that out there. How did you attack assignments, Tom? Were you one that
I became pretty efficient at studying, I think. It was always just a case of sort of trying to find the time. I think what you learn is you just sort of learn to cut through the crap, for a want of a better expression. Like you just sort of learn how to, what am I really trying to achieve here? What's the path of least resistance and what's going to get me the outcome, I think, is what you learn.
Get you to that deadline.
Yeah, time's at a premium, I think, when you're sort of going through and doing all that and trying to juggle a social life. And I think it just sort of teaches you how to get to an outcome quickly.
So, Tom, how did you get involved with working with WEM?
Bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah.
Look, I got involved because obviously we're a chartered accounting firm, so we're a little bit different to a family business. We're a partnership model, and I think in our office we've got about close to 20, but we still have the same issues as a family business in terms of succession. So that's pretty much how I came to be involved with WEM. Stephen Preen, one of our partners who I think has been on here in earlier episodes, he was sort of getting to the point where looking at passing the relationship down to the next generation. I was lucky enough to be the right age and got involved that way, and came out and sort of met with Mike, Graham, and Peter Kay, who's their CFO, and got involved that way just to sort of help look at their succession and their strategy. And it's a difficult transition to make when you're sort of building new relationships and things like that. But one that's been really good and a lot of fun so far.
Mike, were you a bit cynical, or what were you like? Oh, what's this new bloke doing here? Or were you sort of like, oh, this will be good, some fresh eyes to look over the business?
I was excited. I think it's having known Steve for some much shorter period of time than Graham. I knew Steve would not entrust someone else to this relationship who was going to muck it up. And I felt comfortable. Within straight away meeting Tom. that he was the right pick to help steer the WEM HLB relationship moving forward. Yeah, it's been good.
Actually, as the story goes, I actually remember one of the first meetings I went to when you two were in our office, and Stephen just said, as we're walking up there, he goes, "Oh, just give me a minute, no dramas, Stephen." So he went in ahead of me for about a couple of minutes, had no idea what was discussed, and then I went, and it's all been good since then. So. So
Have
thank
you ever
Stephen.
asked?
No, I haven't actually. I
can't tell you. No, you don't want to know, Tom, what was said, really.
Even if I did ask, I don't think he'd tell me.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Keeps the cards close to the chest, does old Stephen.
Is it hard not to talk business at family dinners?
It's hard not to talk business at any time when you're working in a family business.
But does it matter? Or does everybody want to talk about it anyway?
It depends who's there.
Yeah.
If it's our immediate family, everyone would like to know what's going on, but I don't think everyone in the family wants to know every little bit of exact detail that Graham and I want to talk about 20 hours a day. But they want to know broadly what's happening in the business. It's nothing that someone has ever said, "Will you two just shut up and stop talking about work for once?" But I'm also conscious of the fact that, if we're having a good family lunch or dinner like Father's Day on Sunday that's just gone, I'm not going to sit there talking about work. You got to respect the family time because it is so precious. But, I think Graham and I start talking pretty early in the morning and are still talking pretty late at night most days. What about for you, Tom?
I was going to say, Leah, it's a shame my partner Maria is not here for you to ask that question.
Different story there.
Oh, she'll commonly, it's pretty common for her to ask me not to talk business at the dinner table. I'm always telling her the goings on of clients and the firm and whatever, and just sort of bouncing ideas off her. So certain types of people, I think it can become all consuming. Like you've got a big problem in front of you, and you sort of you really focus, particularly when you're working on such big projects like we are with WEM guys around succession and strategy and and other clients. And I just find you can get really sort of focused on it, and there's a lot of sort of mental horsepower that sort of goes into it. And so I think it can be quite difficult not to disassociate at times. But I think it's also very important as well. Like one thing I've sort of seen over the years working with various family businesses, and that is typically the ones that sort of succeed longer term. They do have a very good delineation between the family and the business. Like they make a lot of time to be present as parents and raise their kids the right way. And I think
that would be a conscious thing, yeah?
Well, I think it depends. I think sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's through their own experiences. Like, sometimes, often you'll see other businesses where the kids can almost hold a grudge against the business because it takes their parents away from them. And I think, as I said, the ones that are sort of able to go through multiple generations are generally the ones that have a pretty clear delineation between the business and the family, and the parents actually give time to the kids and the family.
I think it's super important. The family and partners are extremely supporting and understanding. But on the flip side, those that are involved in the business have got to be supportive and understanding of the rest of the family. You're all one joint group. There's so many different facets that all tie people together. It can't just be the business is what ties everyone together. You've got to respect family time and treat it as family time. But at the same time, the family's got to respect that the business is there as well, and it can be spoken about. And people have got to understand what's happening across the business, whether they're working in the business, they're not in the business. They have no interests. They have lots of interests. Everyone has, in those three circles you spoke about, Tom, people lay in different positions, but they've all got to respect each other's positions in those three circles. It can't be someone banging their fist on the table saying, "Oh, I'm here. I want blah." Everyone's got to listen to what I've got to say. You've all got to respect each other's point of view and position where they lay. But having a supportive partner makes a big, big difference. Whether that's hours or being able to talk through things or whatever that is.
I was going to say, I think a key thing Mike just sort of spoke about there is respect, and I think that's quite often overlooked in a lot of this stuff. It's family businesses by nature are very emotional, and I think just having the respect to understand different perspectives and where different people are coming from, and where their position in the family is. I think that's a really crucial ingredient to success.
And also, I guess, not so much their working ethics, but their working styles. Like maybe there are people who want to come home and not talk about work. And maybe not want to hear about work. Like that's their time.
Everyone is an individual.
Yeah.
Some people may want to talk about work in a positive light. Look, this is what's happened and I've achieved today. Other people want to decompress and talk about what went wrong, but not in a negative light, but just talk about this happened and that happened.
Talk it out.
And talk it out so they can go to bed comfortable,
relieved
of it. Other people don't want to talk about it at all. They said, like, no, I'm not at work. Let's not talk about it. Other people just want to just talk generally about their day, not without any real context, whether it's work or home or education, whatever it is, the family, whatever's happened.
And I guess it's like what you said, Mike, it's important to respect everybody and how they approach.
Yeah, to ensure you have healthy relationships.
Yeah.
With everyone.
Yeah.
Not just who you're working with. You got to ensure everyone's respected and their point of view is understood and they're consulted and asked of what they are wanting or not wanting or what they see the future look like or what part they want to play.
I think actually your family is actually probably a really, really good example of it, to be honest, and understanding the different perspectives. Like, your older brother who we're here with today, Tom, he's obviously very creative and you're sort of more driven by the construction industry and moving dirt, playing with actually on that. I remember when I was a kid, I used to play with Tonka trucks. I think yours just might have been a bit bigger.
I could sit in my one so you could push them around on a table.
But no, but I think your family is a really good example of it. I think as I said, Tom's very, very creative. You're sort of more driven by the construction side of the business, and I think but that doesn't sort of take away from your relationship, and you still function very well as a family unit. And I think a big part of that's from as we said, comes back to respect and
understanding and respect. Yeah,
understanding the perspectives, which is important because I mean, there's we're here today talking about a success story, but there's plenty of failures and bad stories of families that can't see eye to eye and blows very successful businesses up. It's very common.
When I started at WEM, I always knew where I wanted to be. I didn't know how I was going to get there or when I was going to get there or why I was going to get there. And I shouldn't say when I started at WEM. There's actually a story from when I was a young kid, probably about 7. I was sitting in Graham's office, which is actually my office now. And I said to Graham, Dad, in a couple of years, you're not going to be working here anymore. I'm going to run the show.
Just a couple. So at the age of 11, you're going to run.
You're going to be out. I'm so, is that right, Mike? Yep. But I'm still going to have you around here. Oh, what do you mean? Well, I'm going to have you as the gardener. I said, what? The gardener? Why is that? And I said, well, simply, if there's something hard I can't work out, I'll reach over, open the window out of the office and say, hey, gardener, come in here. How do you work out blah, 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 blah? And Graham still talks about it now. I still open that window every now and then, just remind me he can be out there sorting out their garden anytime he
wants. Making sure the hedges are okay.
Yeah,
they're looking a bit overgrown, actually.
So, circling back to what I started with was, I had always had the aspirations of, getting through a succession. Didn't know how it was going to be done or what was going to be done or why. For me, it was a few awkward conversations to start with Graham. And straight away, I think Graham caught on that, well, we've got to start talking broader with the family because he could see there's more to this whole picture than just what his and my relationship was going to be. And that's when we turned to Steve and his team and we started having meetings at your office and starting to flesh out what the family needed, what Graham looked for, what I was looking for. And it really helped paint a really clear picture between everyone.
So how long vaguely was that sort of discussion?
Well, being more of a bull at a gate, it took a lot longer than what I thought it was going to take.
a week, we're done.
But now looking back at it, I thought, wow, it was the right path.
Yep.
I think I was ready to make that step, but I had to demonstrate that I could do the right things and participate and understand what the other family members were looking for and their understanding what Graham wanted, what he didn't want. It was really important to be able to understand the other stakeholders between the 3 circles and what each party wanted or didn't want. And I think probably 5 years ago maybe would have started at HLB's office and I think we probably caught up every couple of months, a couple of sessions. And it really started to develop there, and it definitely. reaffirmed to me how important it is to have the right advisors involved with your business, because you can become very entrenched with your blinkers on, looking at the railroad ahead of what's happening. And, for us, we always say we're the best civil contractor at 90 Station Road, Seven Hills.
Yeah.
You've got to get someone else from the outside looking in, helping steer a conversation, provide insight, help create or unpack an awkward conversation that's got to happen, or, ask someone blind surveys, what are you thinking? What do you like? What don't you like? And then collating that so you can get a better understanding.
We always talk about succession as a process and not an event. I think a lot of people just generally think about, succession is, like I think Graham might have said in one of the earlier episodes, right, I'm packing up, I'm out that day, and that's it. And that's how a lot of people actually think about succession, but it's not. And in all honesty, it can go, it takes, we always say it's 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, right.
5 to 7 years for a good succession, because, it's a big thing. Like, you got to, there's a lot goes into it, and a lot of sort of different areas of the business you've got to navigate, and the family and emotions. And
5 to 7 years, I think we touched on this before in an earlier episode as well, that like a lot can change in 5 to 7 years. So you guys also have to be able to pivot, have all these BC plans in the wings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we always, quite naturally with succession, what you see is there's a bit of a strategic renewal, because the next generation and the next leader of the business can, quite often see things a bit differently to the incumbent. So I think that just happens naturally through succession is you will have strategic renewal and different views and different ideas on the way forward and things like that. And as you say, I think that's a constant process, though, looking at strategy and what's happening in markets and things. And
I guess that's why it's important for you to, Mike, for you to catch up with Tom and have that chat every couple of months.
It is important to be able to talk through some ideas with someone external.
Yep.
So that they can maybe paint a picture that you're very entrenched in how you're thinking about something, and they go, well, hang on, if you come from this angle, you can see someone else's point of view. You're not appealing to their perspective. You're just trying to push your point. And that, when two people don't agree or aren't aligned in thinking, you need to think about the other way. How's that other person? And that really helped myself understand the whole process. And I agree. It's a journey. It's not an event, and it's not a sprint either. Even if something is a journey, it's I'm not saying it's a marathon or anything like that, but it's ever changing. In the time from when our discussion started to now, like I've had 2 children in that time.
Yeah, right.
The business has grown significantly during that time. We've probably grown from 120 staff to 220 staff. So all of a sudden, how many more people are you responsible for? The business geographically is different. The valuation of the business is different. The stakeholders are different. The industries that we operate are different. The requirements are different. There's new employees who have different positions. So senior management is different to what it was 5 years ago. I would encourage anyone in my position who's thinking how the succession work. You've got to talk to someone outside. Don't just sit back and get frustrated. And asking open questions is always an important thing to do. And having some awkward conversations to try and get it going, and don't get all charged up. This is the point. We're going to sort it out in this event, because it doesn't happen. And you can get right. You've got to be to create the conversation and keep it going.
And on that point, I think when we usually talk to clients, it can be a very awkward topic to broach. And actually, I was reading something the other day that was sort of saying that they reckon that there's only 1 in 4 businesses actually have a sort of formal approach to succession. It's just it's a very difficult area, and people find it hard to talk about. And I think, but as Mike said, as I said earlier, the businesses that sustain and go multi-generations are the ones that they respect that family element. And I think that's the sort of key, really.
I guess we'll sort of finish this episode off in looking forward. Okay, I'm going to start with Tom first with this one. You have to know Wem very well in order to advise them. Have you and Mike had a conversation of where you see the company going, 10 years from now? Like, is there a path that you two are talking about?
Personally or business-wise?
Let's go both.
Both.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've probably had a fair few conversations about it, to be honest. We've been working through a pretty big piece looking at the next decade, very much at this point around managing the succession from Graham to Mike on the WEM side, and also looking at the actual business itself and what that needs to sort of move to the next level and sustain themselves longer term. On the personal side, I think we probably haven't gone deep enough yet, to be honest, in terms of having, creating the transparency in that. But that'll come. Like this afternoon, actually, we're going out to present the 10-year business strategy to their to their
very exciting
to their employees. It is, and I think and then after we move through that hurdle, I think then the next step is sort of obviously how we support them on that journey, because it's one thing to have a plan, but then the next part is plans always change as events happen and things. So
correct. You can write anything down on paper, but you've actually got to deliver on it.
And sometimes you can't because things have changed.
It's an extremely exciting chapter for WEM this afternoon, where with HLB's assistance we've really unpacked as an executive team, so Graham, myself and Peter Konstantopoulos, come up with where the business we want it to be in the next 5 years. So we sort of said, it's called the next decade because it's about how does the business evolve to beyond its current structure, where it operates, the size of the business, and there's some pretty big changes that need to be made or will be made, or both. To have gone from a business, we look back at some historical numbers, we're trending, $30 to $50 million a year to where it is now, to where we want it to be. It seems it's a very, very big, steep climb, but very achievable. But it needs people to be able to, how our current structure to change and have people take on more responsibilities and stuff, because the traditional role of Graham and I is that people pulling the levers everywhere and pushing and saying, how does this, how's that? He's got to change and people taking on that. So I think HLB will be instrumental in helping us keep that strategy momentum, because I think it's very easy for us to write something down on paper and then we get distracted in the whirlwind of things at WEM, and then 2 years have gone past and we haven't really moved from where we were. It's still the status quo. We've never really disclosed a strategy to the broader business. So that's a really big change for us, and that's where things are evolving at WEM, where I think if someone asked how WEM was performing, it was always given in a qualitative response, like, things are going really well, customers are happy and we're busy. But now we're sort of trying to give quantitative responses as to targets and how we're performing financially and where our growth is, whether it's number of people or regions or revenue or profits or anything like that. Because I'm a firm believer, and we all are, that everyone loves a scoreboard. You don't play a sport and not keep score. It's not much fun. Everyone wants to win. There's always a winning streak in everyone, whether it's a really strong one or not so much. There's always that thing of, if you watch kids playing sport, once you start taking score, their competitiveness takes over.
It's interesting that you finished on this 10-year plan. I was going to say 10-month. I'm like, that's not long enough. 10-year plan, because the next episode we'll be talking about future-proofing. So I think that's going to tie in really nicely. Mike and Tom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Leah.
Thanks, Leah.
For further information, please visit our website, hlb.com.au.